Welcome to the final Q&A of the year, and maybe the last one for a while. I'll be shifting the focus to live streams and answering your questions through shorts or dedicated videos instead. Of course, your questions are still important, so drop them down below as usual, and let's begin. Do you think it's beneficial to keep normal bench top sets in a program when doing variations, for example Larsen pressing, to account for absolute load strength not regressing with heavier weights? The thing is, if you're choosing true more out of less weight variations, they should not detract from your absolute strength, even if you're not lifting as heavy. If the carryover is not one-to-one, then it's the wrong lift for you. Even if you only did Larsen presses for the entire training block, you should be able to set your legs down, arch hard, and instantly hit a new PR. It's all about leverages, and the Larsen press is only about 10% harder. You've even seen this with my recent journey, staying in the 335 to 355 range on Larsen presses, but then effortlessly hitting a 365 bench plus double mini bands, which totals 405 or more at the top. I didn't need to overload my regular bench for that automatic transference, and neither do you. Strength is strength. That said, the skill aspects of your comp lift might decline slightly, but not your strength potential or muscle mass, which is what actually matters. Also, within max 3 weeks, your competition form will return, and you'll start smashing new PRs. So in my opinion, switching to these variations for a block is worth it, especially when preparing for a peak. You don't need to train both simultaneously, though there's nothing wrong in doing so. However, it is more specific and as a result, more fatigue. So there's a trade-off here. For most lifters, this is manageable, but when you're elite, recovery becomes the limiting factor. I realized this firsthand a few months ago when I put too much work on the raw touch and go bench, just doing top sets and back down sets with 315 or more. Progress stalled drastically compared to favoring harder variations with less weight. Forget that if it's not working well for you and you feel burnt out. Get humbled to get stronger. Get weaker to get stronger. Train what you suck at. Address your weaknesses head on. This is how you break through plateaus and unlock godly levels of strength. That's why I love the Larsen press, floor press, arch nemesis bench press, close grip pause bench, etc. It makes the regular bench feel like a joke after. You can just muscle through it. Is lengthened bias lifting primarily applicable in the hypertrophy context? I'm trying to work on my weighted chin and have the sticking point to lockout. Do spider curls or preacher curls make more sense here? Lengthened bias lifting applies to strength as well. Most competition lifts are limited by bottom end strength, with a few exceptions such as weighted pull-ups and street lifting, or arm wrestling for partial elbow flexion strength, and equipped powerlifting, where the lockout is the major limiter. Nearly every movement benefits from extended range of motion or in general training the weakest position, the bottom. That's why pause benching or deficit benching is preferred over high board presses, or below parallel pause squats over high box squats, and stiff-legged deadlifts, just pulling from the floor, over rack pulls from 4 to 6 inches high. Strength is joint angle specific. If you can move a weight explosively from disadvantageous leverages, you're likely to lock it from normal leverages. Of course, if muscular weaknesses still exist, you might struggle to grind even with a fast speed. In those cases, accommodating resistance can help as it pushes up the deceleration curve and teaches you to grind through sticking points. You could also mix in mini partials or focus on accessories like the JM press to build bigger triceps for the bench press, which is key for locking out heavier loads and giving you that squishiness in the bottom. But for the most part, getting deeper or making the end range harder through dead stop training, pauses, camber bars, or closer grips to increase the arm or leg bend will serve you better for both general strength and hypertrophy compared to the opposite, where you're focusing more on the short position. Accessories should reflect the strength curves, though recovery can sometimes be the limiting factor. For example, squeeze-based pushdowns are excellent for elbow recovery and complement overload benching. And when it comes to chin-ups, the choice of curl, whether spider curls or preacher curls, doesn't make a huge difference. Any curl that's easy on the biceps tendons and prevents issues like golfer's elbow while allowing for consistent progression will effectively build bigger biceps and thus improve force output on those chin-ups. It doesn't have to transfer over perfectly. Like preacher curls or hammer curls are likely the best on paper, but honestly, you could even argue that pelican curls are more specific due to their body weight element, despite their instability, and being more stretch base, which is not what you're seeing at the top of a chin. Ultimately, top and chinning strength is better built through paused chin-ups, adding bands or chains, or adding overload isometrics. Curls are a bonus, and most useful for pure hypertrophy, which in turn will help your chin up over time, but not necessarily directly. So whether you choose standing barbell curls or optimized curls, the end results might be nearly indistinguishable. At that point, maybe it's overthinking. So I think the compounds is where the sticking points need to be addressed. The accessories are for correcting weaknesses and hypertrophy. And not everything needs to be lengthened bias, but of course, it should trend in that direction. How do you compare 2 sets of RDLs versus 3 to 4 sets of good mornings in one workout session for growth? I find that even 2 sets of RDLs can be a bit taxing in a full body workout. There are 2 key reasons. You can lift more weight on the RDL, and it involves more muscles, being the upper body. So yes, 2 sets of good mornings can be similar to 1 set of heavy RDLs when it comes to targeting the entire posterior chain. That said, I wouldn't try to match them directly. That can be confusing. Instead, you can do 2 sets of each with similar reps in reserve for comparable net gains. See, the advantage of good mornings is that they allow for more volume and frequency. In 2022, I was doing 3 sets of 10 twice a week. That's 6 sets of hip hinges weekly. I could never manage that with heavy RDLs or let alone conventional deadlifts. The improved stimulus to fatigue ratio makes good mornings an excellent choice for the primary movers, racking up that workload. So if you want to mix in both exercises, I recommend using a top set and back down approach, or ramping sets for RDLs performed once a week. Can even be on a back day. And for your other session being legs, include 2 to 3 sets of good mornings in the 6 to 10 rep range, right after your back squats. This way you just strip off the plates, get to work. Done deal. This gives you a maximum of 5 sets of hip hinges per week, evenly split between the 2 motions. A balanced and effective blending strategy. That said, for optimal recovery, you might even consider focusing solely on good mornings. They're perfect for full body programming, which is what I'm currently doing for my pole days, which are similar to full body. So my workout consists of 1 set of breathing squats, 2 to 3 sets of good mornings, and then chin-ups, rows, and curls, done twice a week. Trying that with RDLs would be a lot harder, though undoubtedly effective. If you can do that, all props to you, bro. Ultimately, the choice is yours. In my eyes, they're both S-tier movements. You can't go wrong no matter what. But in a perfect world, why not just do both? My bench performance seems to be noticeably different in a commercial gym versus my home gym. I bench 225 for 4 at home, while also being able to do 6 to 7 reps in my public gym. Dynabody bench in commercial gym, bezel steel comp bench in commercial rack in the home gym. Why do you think that's the case? If you have a higher quality setup at home, yet are still weaker, it likely means the gym is using fake weights. For example, their 45-pound plates might actually weigh 42 to 43 pounds at the most, which becomes noticeable with 4 plates loaded. Even the barbell weight could be off, being closer to 40 pounds. Altogether, this could result in a discrepancy of 12 to 15 pounds, which clearly explains the performance difference. In addition, gym plates placement vary each time you go. Whereas at home, your equipment stays consistent. It's the same pairs of plates every time. That said, your situation is rather unusual. Most gym benches, plates, and bars are subpar, with narrow, slippery pads on the bench, rubber plates with inconsistent weight distribution, and whippy thin bars with smooth knurling or incorrect ring marks. So I'm not sure what kind of gym you go to, but it sounds like it might cater to DELs, because usually it's the opposite. You're weaker in a commercial gym. So I wouldn't even be surprised if the cable stack weights are also inaccurate, using, say, 3-to-1 pulleys instead of 2-to-1. Because at home, you know your setup is legit. You bought the equipment yourself from a reputable brand that I also use, which guarantees consistency and accuracy. So I don't know. Maybe throw on some microplates as an attempt to match your home gym loading because, trust me, the weight itself is 100% the problem. They are not synced here. Oh man, we're killing this Q&A. What do you think of weighted calisthenics athlete Ian Barseagle saying he got 17.7 inch arms natty with only weighted pull-ups and weighted dips? Ian, which I do believe is natural, can do 80 kilograms for 8 reps on weighted pull-ups and 100 kilograms for 10 reps on weighted dips. Let me ask you a question. How many of you can hit that or ever will? Guys, I can't even rep that, and I've been training weighted calisthenics longer than him. It's an unrealistic expectation, and to top it off, it's still not optimal. And I know that word gets used a lot, but bear with me. The reality is, if Ian trained more like a bodybuilder, he'd probably have 19-inch arms. He's also a genetic freak, achieving a level of strength and physique that would normally take over a decade. So here's a big point. If even a strong genetic outlier could not achieve 18-inch arms with minimalist arm training, how do you think it's going to work out for you? Newsflash, I tried that out as well in the past, and my arms sucked. They were my worst body part. I maxed out at 16 inches with a 5-plate dip and a 4-plate pull-up. Even with a 380 close grip bench, my arms were only 16.5 inches. It wasn't until I started prioritizing isolation work that I grew them right up to 17.25 inches. And again, my dip was 100 kilos for 5 reps, so the weighted calisthenics strength was high and not too far off from Ian's. But that's not what grew my arms, okay? The same applies to basement bodybuilding. He went from 16.5-inch arms to 18 inches by doing preacher curls and JM presses. And it didn't even take 2 years. And I promise you, he's not putting up world-class numbers on dips and chins. And he didn't have to spend 8 years on this journey. That makes far more sense than telling everyone to become a world-class street lifter. Yes, you can build big arms like that, just getting super elite numbers, but it's the least efficient option of all. It's like when guys say, just become an elite gymnast and you'll have sick biceps. Guys, why not just do stable curls and long head isolation work? This is the faster, more efficient route. And I must stress, even Ian would have bigger arms if he specialized. So while I respect what he does a lot, and his programming advice is actually solid, his journey isn't the best blueprint for most lifters. Like, he's got recovery dialed in with his 2 sets every 5 days approach. I train like that as well, focusing on the best weighted calisthenics movements for quickly unlocking elite bodyweight skills. But for every Ian, there are thousands of others who A, didn't get as strong, or B, got close but still had stick arms. The vast majority from our audiences will absolutely end up with lagging arms if they only rely on chin-ups and dips. I know, I and many others have already been there. Don't let history repeat itself. Take a page from Daniel from Fitness FAQs by at least isolating your arms with rings. It really doesn't take much extra work. Do you still use the ramping set method? How would you program it? Yes, I love ramping sets for heavy movements where I know I can't tolerate a high number of sets. In those cases, I don't mind coming in slightly pre-exhausted to nail one brutal top set. The best application for this is for conventional deadlifts or deep rack pulls. It's the only way I can program them without completely destroying my recovery. For example, I might ramp up with 405 x 5, 455 x 5, and finish with 500 x 5, leaving 1 rep in the tank since the fatigue is already high. For additional volume, I'll add 2 to 3 sets of 6 to 10 on good mornings or RDLs, either on the same day or spread throughout the week as described in the previous question. I'll never do more than 1 brutal top set of deadlifts due to the absolute load itself. The same principle can even apply to lead benching. Let's say my top set is 350 x 5. I might ramp up with 295 x 5, 315 x 5, and then hit 350 x 5. For me, ramping sets are reserved for heavy lifts, not necessarily low reps, but where the load on the bar is high. That is the X factor where I choose to use it. So if you're not at an advanced level on a lift, you probably don't need to program that many ramping sets. In general, a top set followed by a back down set works better for most lifters. Can you summarize your best tips and exercises to recover and maintain shoulder health? Sure, here's a blitz summary. Face pulls. Do them every single workout with bands or cables, hitting 100 total reps. 3 sets of 33 or 4 sets of 25 work perfectly. Pull aparts. Go heavy with double bands or multiple springs. Do 1 to 2 sets of 8 to 12 reps, vertical and or horizontal. Dead hangs. Do them daily for full shoulder traction, holding for at least 30 seconds each time. Protraction-based presses include push-ups or emphasize protraction on overhead presses, dips, and bench presses. Stop relying on maximum retraction. It shuts off the serratus. Reinforce a natural scapulohumeral rhythm. Lou raises. Prioritize these over traditional lateral raises to promote full upward scapular rotation. Overhead presses. Shrug at the top of standing presses and include both standing and seated variations, not just seated, which can constrict the scapula. Upper back training. Train it hard. Row what you can bench for reps to ensure strong support musculature. If you can't strict row 2 plates for 10, even with cables, but you're benching 3 plates, you have imbalances, which will also affect your pressing stability. Lastly, mix in pressing variations like mini partials, as in floor pressing and one board presses, deficits like arch nemesis bench, and slingshot bench press to minimize shoulder overuse. Sometimes you want a bit of pop off the chest. The key is to train all joint angles, constantly rotating variations, and eliminating any weak links. This well-rounded approach will keep your shoulders durable in the long term. While minimalist programs may seem appealing for faster progress, they also carry a higher risk of overuse injuries and load management issues. Fewer movements make it harder to account for all the training variables. Don't cut corners. Commit to a maximized program for your future. Forget about high specificity. For longevity in this iron game, learn from greats like Matt Wenning. Changing the pressure gradients is key. Not to mention, avoiding psychological burnout. Hey Alex, I'm 5'8" with a 6'2" reach. Would you recommend I do block pulls or rack pulls with a longer reach than my height? Also, would I benefit from doing board presses from volume over the conventional bench press? Fun fact, my arms are also longer than my height. I'm 5'5" with a 5'8" wingspan. Despite this, I'm still poorly built for deadlifts because of my long torso. So it's not just your ape index that matters. If your body stays relatively upright during deadlifts and pulling from the ground is a strong position for you, I wouldn't spend too much time on block pulls or rack pulls. Stick primarily to floor pulls, either conventional, stiff-legged, or from a deficit. For a bit more top overload, you can add a small amount of band or chain tension or pull from 1 to 2 inch blocks, but anything beyond that is likely a waste of your time for your structure. The carryover won't be there, and it'll look a lot less hingy. As for bench pressing, board presses are a must, especially with a close grip preference. Your long arms essentially give you a natural deficit bench press, stretching your delts way more than a shorter armed lifter. Of course, you can still touch your chest like any powerlifter, but for long-term joint health, some restrictions are beneficial. And heck, I even do this, even though the bench is a good lift for me. So I'd recommend doing full range of motion bench press one day or board presses the next. This is safer and more standardized than doing manual partials, allowing you to better adjust for your leverages. Think of it this way. When I block pull, it's like a tall guy pulling from the ground. Similarly, when a tall guy uses a one board, it's like he becomes a short guy benching. Makes sense? By replicating the opposite build, you reduce injury risk and optimize performance for your structure. It just helps with load management in a non-complicated way. Alex, what do you think of the guillotine press? I've been using it as a variation for chest growth and it seems to be getting gnarly pumps with it with no shoulder discomfort. Granted, I'm using about 50% of my working weight that I use for regular bench and focus on high rest 10-15. Do you think it's a worthwhile variation or am I playing with fire here? Okay, the guillotine bench press does target the upper chest more because it involves rotating the upper arm to press in the same plane as the clavicular fibers. This alignment also allows for a deeper stretch since the bar touches higher on your chest compared to bringing it low to your sternum. So for those without an inclined bench, the guillotine press is a great alternative. As for concerns about shoulder safety, this is where proper load management is essential, just like it is for other lifts like behind neck presses, cambered bar bench, ATG dips, or ATG good mornings. You need to gradually build tissue capacity at those end ranges and ease into the movement over time. This process can take months, even if you're already strong when starting out. For example, if you can guillotine press 225, but begin with 135 as an accessory and microload each session over 3 months, you'll eventually work up to your original working weight. The difference is that your tissues will now be resilient, 100% adapted, and you'll have mastered the movement pattern, so there won't be a tendency to break down your form. I followed this exact protocol with Good Mornings years ago, starting with just a 45-pound empty bar despite deadlifting in the high 500s. I did the same thing with behind neck presses recently, again using an empty bar. This gradual progression is how you overcome the dangerous reputation of certain lifts. To make them safe, focus on sideboard precision technique. Stick to the 8 to 15 rep range. Always use a slower negative, pausing each rep, and avoid being explosive to minimize peak forces. By following these guidelines, the guillotine press, and even behind the neck presses can be performed safely. Like I used to press 185 behind the neck, but now I go a lot lighter with flawless form. Same applies here. And by the way, when you're ready, you can take it up a notch by doing the guillotine press off an incline. This has been my most effective upper chest builder to date. I use the Smith machine or a barbell on a 30-degree incline, pressing straight to the clavicle. And I've done sets of 10 with 235 this way, with zero issues. So as long as you avoid ego lifting and respect your limits, in general, flare pressing is a lot safer than you once thought. I know, because I used to struggle with it years ago, but not anymore. Would you still recommend a chest expander for an at-home training enthusiast? It is a bit expensive, but if it's durable and good for training, I'd like to try it out. Edit, I'm not sure if I should buy that or a simple pulley system, which seems to cost half the price. Get both, but absolutely, it's one of the best home gym pieces I bought in the last 2 years. I now consider it a must-have for shoulder health and for learning how to strain with the triceps and upper back working in coordination. It has literally given me a sinewy, dense look in my yoke, just like Fred Rollon. I did not have that detail until I started using the chest expander, and my rear delts exploded. They became a dominant body part, which is one of the weirdest things that I never expected. As natural hypertrophy stated, it looks like a newborn baby coming out of my body. Hell, even Louis Simmons noted that there were fewer benching injuries in the 70s and credited the chest expander for that. So I do horizontal pull-aparts with 7 springs for reps and vertical with 8 springs for reps, or with 2.5 super springs. I'm trying to get 3 super springs in the short term, and my lifetime goal is maxing out the expander with 5 super springs, which no one has done yet in the modern world, but Fred Rollon was able to. So reverse pec deck or reverse flies were never able to replicate these gains, even though I also did those for years. Intensity through insane grindability is a big reason for that. The chest expander is a completely different animal, which you'll only understand once you've abused it. Please see my full guide on it. And if you're skeptical, start with a budget option like from Bells of Steel or Amazon. Link in the description. That's what I did. Within just a few workouts, my gut had a feeling this was the real deal. It's been a staple ever since. So once you max out the cheapo chest expander at 5 springs, consider upgrading, or take my word for it and invest from day one. Now the best chest expander in the world is made by Robert Baraban from shop.handgripper.net. He specializes in Bronze Era equipment. Each piece is crafted by him in Austria using top quality German steel. It's not mass produced, which is why it's pricey. It's a premium European product and a one-man operation. You can also check out his Super Springs or the new Roll-On expander, which replicates the exact tensile strengths Fred Rollon used to build his incredible Bronze Era physique. Or, for a more budget-friendly option, get the Bells of Steel expander and pair it with Robert Baraban's Super Springs for a similar experience. Personally, I only use the best because chest expander work is something I take very seriously and I want mine to last a lifetime. Buy once or buy twice, you know the deal. Whether you start small or go all in, this tool is an absolute game changer for upper body development. Specifically, the rear delts, upper back, and triceps. I even found it helps with free weighted stability and straight arm strength. Let me tell you, you get good at grinding those end ranges. And there you have it, guys. I hope you've enjoyed these Q&As. Tune in live next time and don't be shy to ask more questions in the comments section because they will be answered.